God is so big. God's diversity is so big, and we don't have to have the wood tone, stained glass Midwestern church that I grew up with. That doesn't have to be the way the worship experience looks for everybody, and God can reach different people in different ways and speak to them in ways that allow them to come to worship and partake in that infinite diversity.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto area on Joy Radio, and Aisha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Aisha.
Aisha!
Hello, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing good, but I have an admission to make here. I have to be honest with you. I have an addiction.
Oh, gosh. Is this one that we need to air or not?
Well, I'm just going to be outright honest about this thing. As you know, I do voiceover work on the side. It's kind of like a side business. And my addiction is this. I spend most of the profits on gear, more gear for my studio.
Gosh.
And
here we go.
And I mention that to you because our guest today sells gear in addition to doing installs and training sessions and whatnot. And I went on his website, and I'm salivating.
You're overwhelmed.
I'm overwhelmed with the products they sell. I'm thinking, I need this. I'd like this. And so I apologize in advance if it seems like I'm hoarding the conversation with Ben, but he's just like his job it sounds like a lot of fun, and what he does for a living, and also the products. I mean, this is right up my alley. You know what I'm saying?
I know it is. It's like going into Home Depot with my husband.
For you or your husband?
For my husband.
Right.
Definitely for my husband.
Yeah, because your husband, Joseph, he's a handyman. He does a lot of rentals and stuff like that. He's basically a general contractor, right?
Yes, he is.
You mentioned to me he's actually working with our guest, Ben Stowe, right now from NFLX Professionals. He's doing some work for you guys?
Yes, he is.
What's he doing?
He sure is. Actually, we are revamping the entire audio system at my father-in-law's church.
Oh, okay.
So, yep. My husband is heading that project up. And Ben, I don't think we could have gotten anyone better to help out on this project.
He sounds very knowledgeable. So he's been doing this for a long time. I'm really excited for this conversation. Ben Stowe from NLFX Professionals.
Or was it Yogi Berra that said predictions are hard to make, especially about the future?
I don't think he said it like that. I think he said it like, predictions are kind of, or however he talks.
I think you're thinking of Yogi Bear.
Sorry, yeah.
Having a picnic basket?
I was.
I was thinking of the baseball player, Yogi Berra, but yeah.
Now, your bio on IG says, I help people with their audio, video, and lighting needs. My goal is to solve problems before you even know you have them. I honestly don't know why Aisha suggested you should come on the show, because
me either.
I looked at your NLFX Pro website and I was like a kid in a candy store. Did a bunch of window shopping. In fact, quite honestly, I spend a lot of my weekends window shopping because I'll be honest, yes, I do voiceover work on the side, kind of a side business, but I spend a majority of the profits on new gear. So
that sounds like a musician.
Yeah. So I'm always looking at new stuff. Like I'm looking at the art voice channel right now thinking, do I need it? No, not really, but it'd be nice to have, that sort of thing. I've got my eyes on getting a used, now you might be familiar with this kind of radio rack mount unit, but the Symmetrix 528E, they don't even make it anymore, but I want to get a used one of those because it's got some great features on it and it's a great little unit, and from what I understand they never go bad. They were a bit of money way back when, but you can probably pick up a used one for half the price or a quarter the price now. And so I'd like to get one of those just to have it in my...
I'll keep my eyes out. If I see one, I'll send you a link to it. So.
Just send it to me.
Well,
just send it to me.
If we get a physical unit on hand, I'll do that.
Okay, that's good.
I was just saying if I saw one pop up anywhere, Yeah, I'll do that.
I've done all the Google searches. I know who's got what.
Okay. So any friend of Aisha's is a friend of mine. So
it's just more of a question: am I willing to spend the money on it now or down the road, or can I get a better deal? That sort of thing.
When you said IG, I broke out in like a cold sweat because I actually forgot I had an Instagram. I'm like, oh no, what's on there? Like, what quote did I put on there? But yeah, I think that characterizes what I do really well. It's my job to try to figure out their problems before they exist. So.
Would it be fair to say that your job is not a 9-to-5 job?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, there's 2 9s on the clock and 2 5s on the clock, right? So you'll
hit one of them at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, as they say. But there's no such thing as office hours.
Evenings, weekends. What is a typical day for you, or is it all over the place?
All of the above.
Yeah, my role in particular, which I really enjoy, is a very diversified one. I get to kind of work in a lot of different areas. I've done sideline support for national football games. I've done front of house for tour. I've done system teching for tour. I've done install and system design, and this is. I would say I'm celebrating my 30th year in the industry. I'm not sure if I'm celebrating or not.
Awesome.
but anyway, I've been here for 30 years, so I guess we'll call it celebrating. Yeah. So, and that means that you're going to have a lot of variety in the time that goes with those tasks, right? Being in the office could be a 9 to 5, but if you're going to support people that are out in the field, our customers that are touring or venues, they're not working 9 to 5s, right? So you kind of have to be able to meet people where they are, and churches are on Sunday, right? So I don't know if there is a typical day. Sometimes for a large outdoor concert, maybe I'm starting at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm finishing at 2 or 3 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
Of all of those jobs that you have, which is your favorite? Or do you have a favorite?
I think that's like trying to pick a favorite child, I mean,
I hear you.
Let's be honest, everybody has a favorite kid. No, I'm just kidding. Some kids make it easier than others. No, I'm kidding again. I have 2 teenagers in the house, so they get to trade roles. I don't know. I think I really like them all, and I think the fact that I get to do so many different ones helps, because everything is always new and it's always different. Even though you and I've done a lot of shows together, every show is different, right? So,
right.
As far as the last few years is concerned, like the pandemic changed things for everyone. Your company sells product, but you also, I guess you're the guy that is the person in front that is, giving recommendations, kind of troubleshooting, determining what you need to do to accomplish what you need to accomplish. With everyone over the last few years, I'm assuming they're buying audio and lighting for their online. Maybe they've got podcasts they want to start, or they just want to have better social posts with lighting and stuff like that. Have you found things have picked up because of the pandemic, or what happened for you guys?
Well, things changed a lot, in many ways for the better, but I'm kind of always an optimist. I guess you sort of look at progression of the direction things are going, right? I wouldn't say I'm the guy out front. I'm kind of a cog in a wheel. I've got some really extraordinary coworkers, and I love that I'm just one of a group of smart, kind, sincere people that enjoy helping. But certainly, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And I think we've seen things for the podcast realm, the live streaming realm have really improved. The emphasis got put there, the R&D money got put there. And so, particularly in churches where initially they were starting out, putting a phone on a stand, and that was the live stream.
Yeah, that was their
now,
camera.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And now they've figured out the real outreach value, the evangelistic characteristics of it, if you will, that we can reach a lot of people who aren't coming into our building for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And so now I think they're beginning to upgrade those systems, and of course technology has moved in some great ways to support that. So that's one of the places we're helping churches in particular a lot, is to improve those live streams and the quality of their ability to take the message outside the walls of the church. And of course we all learned in Sunday school, a church isn't a building, a church isn't a steeple, right? So
yeah. Good point. Your company, NLFX, do you gear your business, is it tailored specifically to the Christian community, like churches and Christian concerts, or is that just a very small component of the whole picture?
I would say that's a very small component of the whole picture. And I would say that, we certainly love the fact that we get to support churches and we get to support, Christian tours and dear friends like Aisha and, but it's, we also do work for like the U.S. military. We do, stadiums and venues. We do, just a whole wide variety of things. And I think about it in this way, and it's interesting, Aisha, this might be kind of an interesting thing for you to respond to, because as a Christian artist, that's a genre, right? And
Sure.
You can be a Christian and you can be an artist and not necessarily be a Christian artist, right? I know a lot of secular artists who are Christians, but the genre they sing
Sure.
or they, you would say, okay, this firefighter is a Christian who's a firefighter, but he's not a Christian firefighter.
Right.
Or this carpenter is a Christian carpenter, but he's not a Christian carpenter, right? But in music, it's different because it creates that genre. So I guess in that way, we get to support a lot of Christians who are doing their work a day, even if it isn't, Christian music, right?
Right.
So do you travel a lot?
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the things that
Because
I just got back.
I mean, is the travel for work, or is the travel because it's just a chance to get away from the teenagers at home?
I'll never tell. No, I think that was one of the things that COVID changed a lot for me, is the chance to not travel as much. I was on the road probably pretty consistently 200 days a year. And
That's a lot.
It is. And again, I love what I do, but I also love my family. I've got, wonderful kids and an amazing wife. And there are these moments where you have to reconcile those loves. I remember my son, who's now just about 18, but he was about 9, I think, at this time. And he saw me walk into the door with my suitcase, and he was kind of like, where are you going? And like, well, I got to go back out on the road. And, I tried to tell him about the interesting places I was going to go, but he didn't really care. There's only 2 places in the world, home and not home. Right. And, he said, well, why do you have to leave all the time? And I said, well, it's my job. And he said, well, can't you get a different job? And, it was heartbreaking, but it was a good chance for some honest dialogue where I said, well, I could, but I also love my job, son, and it's provided some great opportunities for us. It's provided well for this family, and you get to do things that are unique in that realm, and it's what I'm good at, and it's what I want to do. And we all kind of get along with that now, I think, but it does present some of those challenges, right? But I think that you can be gone a lot and still be present, and you can also be home a lot and not be present. There's a lot of people who don't travel and they're home all the time, but they're not really there. They're, soaked into their phone screen or whatever they're doing at home. And so I think that if anything, being gone has actually allowed me to be more present. It's created an awareness that I'm like, I really need to try to be engaged with my family.
Well, certainly the awareness now more than ever. I know from some of the Christian artists that I've spoken with over the last couple of years, during the pandemic couldn't go on the road. And when they went back on the road again, and they just were on the road for less time. So they would, instead of going for 15 days straight on the road, they would do 3 or 4 days, come back into town, spend time with their family for a few days, then they'd be back on the road for 3 or 4 days. The length of time they were on the road shrunk enormously and significantly, and they've kept doing that now. I think now it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer with festivals and stuff, because that's a big thing. That's a big income for them throughout the year. So it'll be interesting to see if they stay on the road longer again, but I think they were finding that, hey, this makes more sense for my family.
Oh, I'm definitely traveling less, and I kind of started to say that COVID changed that, and then I kind of changed directions in the thought. So that definitely I found tremendous value in being home. It was kind of funny, but it's, maybe not funny. It's funny because it worked out well, but being gone so much for so much of my marriage, I was really kind of wondering, how's this going to work out when I'm home all the time? Not only am I not gone, but we're also not leaving the house. My wife and I are both in the same house 24/7 because we were both working from home during, the pandemic. And I honestly thought, when our dynamic has been me being gone so much, are we going to be able to live together 24/7 and still like each other? Yeah. And that was a genuine concern. And I'm really happy to report that it worked out great. And we found that we actually really even had more of a synergy, I think, which was really cool. Now, of course, I'm traveling again, but I'm trying to find that balance. I'm trying to not be gone 200 days a year now.
In your role, do you spend a lot of time on the financial side of things, like quoting jobs, or do you not get involved in that? Like you kind of say, okay, you've called me to consult. You put in whatever time you need to be able to look at a job and figure out what needs to be done for that job, but somebody else actually quotes it so that you can just concentrate on doing the work versus spending a lot of time crunching numbers.
I kind of work, again, I do a variety of things, and we've got some really good people who are, that's their primary focus is system design and estimating and that sort of thing. But there are times that I do get directly involved in that. And, sometimes I'm really happy to, I really wouldn't want anybody else to do that, even though I've got some really amazing coworkers, there's things that, I really want to be a part of. So I do. Again, my role is difficult to define, and that's really largely my fault. My job description says I should.
You're so good at everything.
Oh well, no, I'm definitely not. But thank you for saying that. But I think the joy, leads me to that. Where I'm really lucky that I get to do a lot of things that I like to do, and some days it's very much a job, and I don't like it. But that's why it's called a job. But most days I get to find that fulfillment. We just wrapped up a couple church installs in Des Moines and in Missouri, and I haven't gone on an install in a long time. We've got really great technicians and really great install guys, and I don't normally go out and do install work or even in-field commissioning, but these were both projects that have my fingerprints on it, and it was so awesome. I was able to stay for the first service that one of these churches did. We finished the job on a Saturday, and their first service was on a Sunday. Nothing like cutting it close, but it was. We kind of had to thread the needle because the whole church leadership team was leaving on a missions trip. So that really was the way it had to be, right? It was just one of these things. Anyway, it was just so awesome to be there Sunday and to see this system alive with people in the congregation, and not just do a training and turn over the keys and say, well, here's your new system. Thanks and goodbye.
You're finding a lot more churches adapting to the technology, whether it be digital or wedges versus in-ear monitors. I mean, that's a big change for churches even in the last 5 years. In-ear monitors, that was for performers doing concerts and stuff, and now it's like for the worship team.
Well, the whole worship experience has changed so much, and I think in-ear monitors are a great thing because, particularly in even smaller churches, if you've got stage wedges, you've now got a stage volume problem. Many churches don't have professional sound engineers. You have really well-meaning volunteers who give of their time and their talents, and they're taking on this steep learning curve of technology, and they're trying to battle all these things, audio transients, things that James, you and I would, love to talk about. But for some people, this is really foreign, and they just, they give of their time on a Sunday morning to come in and stand at the console. So doing those kinds of things really can help when you start eliminating all that stage wash, all that stage noise. IEMs can be a great thing there. But I think, too, the worship experience has changed a lot. And it's funny, I was just talking to this church, and they were talking about getting rid of their organ. And I sort of mused with the pastor, and I said, long before us, remember there was a time the organ was new. And somebody said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to add an organ. And probably people lost their mind and said, not in this church. We're not having an organ in this church. And now they're getting rid of it, 70, 80 years later. I don't know what it is, but I sort of joke, and this will probably draw the ire of somebody, but, I sort of joke that if we were really worshiping in a traditional sense, we'd be hiding in an upper room. The worship experience has evolved a lot over the last 2,000 years.
And drums. I mean, who would think that you'd have drums in a church? Like, really? Sorry, that's meant for the older generation. Sorry.
Well, or coffee. I mean, actually,
good point.
Right.
I think it was a pope that blessed coffee and made it okay for us to drink. And by the way, that guy's my hero. So
Yeah, you mentioned organ. That's an instrument that sounds great, and I don't necessarily think any church should get rid of. It's really, how do you control the signal If you could get a digital signal out of that thing versus, a big Hammond speaker or something like that, that would be ideal because they sound great and I think they still have a place. But it's really controlling that sheer volume with everything else that's going on a stage.
Well, no doubt. And in the live stream realm, and of course, most organs, I have a friend who tunes pipe organs, and he calls electric organs, he calls them toasters. I don't know where the name came from. But anyway, a lot of organs now are MIDI controlled. And there are ways to get those voices out digitally because miking an organ is really hard, actually.
Yeah.
But you're right. And I'm not saying that the organs should go. I think that's an individual leadership decision for each church. What should that worship experience be like? And I think that's one of the really, really cool things is that God is so big. God's diversity is so big, and we don't have to have the wood tone, stained glass Midwestern church that I grew up with. That doesn't have to be the way the worship experience looks for everybody. And God can reach different people in different ways and speak to them in ways that allow them to come to worship and partake in that infinite diversity. So, the organ might be perfect for some worship experiences and it might not fit in others, and that's okay.
Have you ever had any churches in your installs versus just the audio? Obviously, you get involved in lighting and stuff as well. Have you ever had requests for strobes and smoke?
Oh, yeah. I mean, some churches have a very...
very elaborate these days.
Yeah, I guess the word is contemporary, right? But, some of these, some church, some worships are almost like a rock concert. I mean, maybe they are a rock concert, and it's very, produced, and it's very, much like you might find in the secular realm. And again, if it's helping people come to know Jesus, then that's a great thing. A friend of mine who's a worship arts pastor said, God doesn't need our help, but the people do.
Right.
It's interesting because my brother, he's a pastor, and he's, I hear some stories from him every once in a while. And I think he was telling me something about how somebody in his church wanted to have some kind of directory of members or something like that. Or it was either that or they wanted to have, a physical piece of paper that was their weekly announcement. So they wanted to have a piece of paper in their hand like churches have traditionally done in the past. And
sure.
Mine still does.
and some churches don't, and his is one of them. And his response to that person was, look, every church is different. If I go to Taco Bell and order a burger, I'm not going to be able to get the burger from that place. If I want a burger, I'm going to go to a burger place. If I'm looking for a taco, I'm going to go to Taco Bell. And that's the same thing with churches. If you are looking for, contemporary, lights, smoke, strobe, whatever else, go to a church that has that versus, wanting your church that you're currently attending or this church that maybe you visited, they don't have that. Well, then go to a church that has it if that's really what turns your crank, right?
Yeah, we're not competing, we're not competing to convert people from other congregations. We shouldn't be, right? There's so many unchurched people out there that there's tremendous opportunities to share that with, others that aren't already going somewhere, right? So, but, to your point, if you're looking for a different worship experience, then, maybe go where you might find that. I just met a pastor when I was out on the road. Another pastor said, hey, please go talk to my friend. He really needs some help with technology. And I was going near this guy's town. And he told me that he had just recently become a pastor, and it was a second career. And previously he had been a bartender. And I thought, wow, that is the most perfect thing I could possibly imagine. I mean, how many people, and I asked him this question, I said, Pastor, how many people came to your bar looking for what they could only find in church? And I said, I really hope you still go to the bar. And he said, I do. And I said, awesome. because, Jesus said a hospital isn't for the healthy, right? Church isn't for the righteous. Church is for people like me who are, flawed and sinful and insecure. And we need help, That's what church is for. It's not for those who are good enough to get in the door, which is good because I don't know if I'd get in, but
Yeah, good point for all of us.
I love that. I love it because, when we're talking about going to a church that suits you, it's like at the end of the day, as long as they can find Jesus when they come into a church, if it's stained glass windows or organs or smoke, if they can find Jesus, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I 100%, 150% agree with that.
Aisha, I don't have anything else except to mention that we really should get Ben and his company sponsoring the podcast or something like that.
Wait, I have something else. I want to ask Ben about, is there a funny story from you being on the road and setting up for festivals or big shows?
Oh, yes.
A funny story that doesn't include Aisha.
Oh, shoot. That was the first one that came to
Sorry.
mind, actually. The first one that came to mind was actually about you, Aisha.
Really?
Because it was. And
Well, then go ahead. I just was
Yes,
being
yes. I
comical
want to
there.
know this one.
I'm terrified to tell this story now because, I love your husband, Joseph. He's just such an awesome guy, and you guys have such an awesome stage dynamic. But, from my view at front of house, you've got this, you're obviously just such a strong, dynamic person, and you're out front leading worship, and you're just so good at what you do. And he's a fantastic partner for you and a fantastic supporter, but he's behind you on the drum riser,
Yes.
And I don't know if it was just Joseph. I'm so sorry. Like, this is. I want to tell you right now, brother. I am so sorry. I should never tell this story.
It's okay. Aisha's going to tell him not to listen to this episode, so we're
That's
good.
right. Yeah, don't do it. And it maybe didn't play out the way it looked, but gosh, it was sure funny. So there we are at front of house, and we're setting monitors, and we're getting your voice in his ears, his in-ear monitors, and he's got his finger up, more of Aisha in my ears, and then as soon as you turn around, he starts pointing down, take it out. And I'm like, the fact that you're married, and I'm like, this guy's got his wife's voice blasting in his ears. I'm like, I was like almost crying. I was laughing so hard.
That's hilarious.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joseph.
It's always the sound guy's fault too, right?
I'll take it. You know what? That's okay. That's part of the job description. You know.
It's funny. They say that a sound guy is doing their job well when nobody says anything or complains, or if you don't get complimented. If you get complimented, it's usually to make up for something bad that happened.
Well, I think you have to have really thick skin, and
For sure.
Sure.
I've definitely made some mistakes working with Aisha and Joseph, and they were so gracious and great about it. But, you have to recognize that the person who's out front, the person whose name is on the marquee or on the bill, they're the boss, and
Yep.
their brand is at stake. If I've said before, I can't make a bad band sound good, but I can make a good band sound bad. So if I'm doing sound for Aisha and I make mistakes, I'm affecting her brand. I'm affecting her ability to, reach people. I'm affecting her ability to sell records and to book dates. And that's a responsibility that shouldn't be taken lightly. And if I screw up and she chews me out, which, by the way, she's never chewed me out. She's really a great person. But I think the point is, even if she chewed me out, she'd still be a great person. Sometimes, you have to have the call a huddle or have the locker room talk, and you have to take your lumps because you deserve them, right? You have to recognize that it's not about the sound person. It's about the person whose name is on the bill.
The only thing I'll add to that is the only time the sound guy calls the shots, is when they're doing a sound check. Right?
Well, and I think, I've had the really good fortune of working with some extraordinary artists, Dove Award winners, Grammy Award winners, Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, Country Music Hall of Famers. Literally, I was working over the weekend with a theatrical group out of New York, and the guy asked me, he said, are any of the bands you work with good, or are the bands you work with, good? Or I forget how exactly he asked the question, and I replied, they're all good. They're all good, or we wouldn't be playing venues like this, right?
Right.
They're all good. And I think the really, really good ones also, even though they have a sense of what their sound needs to be, and they have a sense of what their brand is and what that should be, I think the really good ones also appreciate and have dialogue with their sound person. Should we try a different microphone? Are we getting the tone we want? Or here's some adjustments we could make that would help, So it's not purely like a subservient role, right? I think it's a partnership, but at the end of the day, you have to defer, and you have to know that the boss is the person whose name is on the record.
Right.
And that's the end of the story.
Yeah, I guess my point was just the fact that when you're doing a sound check, it's not just in the case of Aisha, for instance, it's not just her singing. She could have other vocalists. She could have, you could have drums. You could have a whole pile of live instruments where you're trying to do a check on each one of those instruments, getting them sounding right, not necessarily the EQ as much as the balance and whether it's in the mains or in the monitors. So that's why a sound guy would want to kind of direct that process. But once once the mix is there, it's, you take a step back and the direction comes from the stage. It doesn't come from the sound guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's your job. That's the sound person's job. And that's how you serve that artist, is by taking charge and doing your job. And I'm really lucky. Most times when I'm mixing at front of house, I've got a monitor engineer who's mixing monitors, and that really helps because the monitor person, I think, in a lot of ways has the harder job. They're doing lots of different mixes for a very discerning audience, which is the band.
Yeah.
And when they're doing that, I really can just kind of follow along at front of house as they're going through the input list. I can kind of get things dialed in at front of house, and I'll tell you what, the easiest bands to mix are the bands that mix themselves. So if that monitor engineer has got the band very comfortable, if the monitor engineer is giving the band what they need to hear, my job becomes exponentially easier.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And that's important to have a great team.
Yeah, when you talk about a church environment too, me doing sound in church as an example, I spend more time on the monitor mix than I do on what it sounds like in front of house, because I can clean that up after the fact. I can clean,
100%.
like to me, I need to make sure they're happy on the stage. They can hear each other. They can hear what they need in their mix. I'll worry about the EQ on the various channels and stuff. I might need somebody to, wail on the drums for a little bit while I do a final quick mix or something like that. But other than that, it's the monitor mix that is the most work for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And, I do a lot of teaching. I spend a lot of time teaching both professionals who are working in the industry and also, volunteers. And I love sharing this with church volunteers and things. But I also love teaching people that are doing sound professionally. So I'll offer two pieces of advice that people can kind of take or leave. One would be to the worship musicians themselves. And that is to say, sound check how you will play. If you go up to the mic during sound check and you're like, check 1 2, check 1 2, and then you wail when you're performing, you're not helping the sound person.
Right.
Go out and play like you will play, so that the work you're doing, James, like you talked about, that those levels are close to right. And then probably the best piece of advice that I would offer to any audio professional or volunteer who's doing this is to fix the problem at the source. Here's an example. How many times, James, have you seen somebody spend hours trying to EQ bad sounding drums when, maybe the drum just sounds bad, or B, more common is the mic placement is bad. And just moving the mic saves you hours of messing around on a board to fix a problem that maybe you can't fix. Always fix the problem at the source.
Unless you're trying to fix it mid-service.
Well, yeah, it's
midstream.
Sort of,
yeah, I mean, somebody could have kicked the stand or moved the stand inadvertently, and now you're trying to make up for it. What can you do?
Yeah, there's always exceptions, but I think as a general rule, get those things sorted out ahead of time. Good gain structure. You can't fix things at later stages of gain. If your mic preamp is not set well, it's not. If it's overdriving, all you can do later is turn up or down an overdriven signal, right?
Yeah.
So that would just be. I actually got a class to chant that. It was kind of cool, but I got everybody saying, "Fix the problem at the source. Fix the problem at the source." It was like the coolest nerd thing you ever saw. But yeah. But really, that's the mindset. I would say. Again, I don't know if anybody wants the advice, but there it is. So
yes, we'll take it all.
And if you make a change, remember the change you made in case you have to revert back.
Oh, that's another one. And I'll tell you, this is one of my favorite slides that I put in almost every presentation that I do on live sound mixing, and it is little changes, little mistakes. Mm-hmm. If you go nuts diving into that desk, just turning every knob you can find, trying to chase a problem, you have now potentially created a lot more problems, and now you have to dig yourself back out of that. So make purposeful actions, and if you don't really know what you're doing, don't do a lot of it.
Yeah. Ben, thank you so much for hanging with us. Really enjoyed our conversation. We could have talked for hours, I'm sure, but we've only got so much time on the podcast.
I hope we get to someday. I look forward to it, yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, James. Thanks for having me on. Aisha, thank you so much. I'm honored.
Love you, brother.
You too. Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
There you have it, everybody. Our buddy Ben Stowe with NLFX.
My new friend.
Mm-hmm.
It is time now to get some artist advice. This week we hear from John Reddick.
Point to Jesus. You know what? I think before we point to Jesus, we have to lean into Jesus. So I would say, lean into Jesus. We can point to Jesus all day long, but if we're not trying to struggle, I mean, if we're real about humanity, then it's hard to follow someone you don't see when everything else that is against you is something that you see, in the daytime. I mean, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. But those powers and principalities work through tangible things. So it may be a struggle sometimes, but push through to lean towards Jesus, because then I think that's when we're able to point to him, not as if we are these perfect beings, but because we realize, dang it, I'm so imperfect that he loves me anyway. And he's exactly the direction I need to be going in. I would say push through that.
Going from one to another, he started with point to Jesus, and then he changed his mind and said, lean into Jesus first, and then push through and then point to Jesus. Yeah.
And I feel like you can't point people to Jesus if you haven't leaned into him.
Right. It's
yourself,
actually quite a simple point, but pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is all the time we have for today, Aisha. Before we go, I do have to say a big thumbs up to our producer. Justine does a lot of work behind the scenes making this whole podcast happen. And you know what? She does all the stuff you see on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. She does all that stuff. I just share, she does all the work. She does all the heavy lifting on that stuff. And it's a lot of work. And she does posts throughout the week as well, not just on the day that we release the podcast, the new episode. She does a lot of work behind the scenes. So I just want to give her a two thumbs up, big pat on the back, and handshake, whatever you want to call it.
What you're going to have to do, Justine, is add some applause. So right here, applause for Justine. Whoa!
Well, there's the applause, and it is time for us to go. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Between Grooves, and on Instagram, Between Grooves Pod. Check us out, and don't forget to leave any comments. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Aisha and James on Facebook and Twitter at Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.